We're talking about how you're wrong about balance.
Wow, Frank, this new supplement for Daggerheart, a new cycle, now available on DriveThruRPG, is really good.
Oh, thanks, man. I put a lot of work and effort into it. It took a little bit of time, but I'm glad you enjoy it.
Some of these classes don't seem very balanced.
What?
I think I could have done better. Hey guys, welcome to What is Tabletop, where we're discussing balance today.
People don't know what they mean when they say balance. Charles.
It's like when you stand on a beam and you try not to fall off, right?
No.
Okay.
Well, yes, we're talking about balance today because people don't know what balance is actually important for. People always talk about things being broken or too powerful or this or that, and I think people miss the point. And so that's what we're talking about. But first...
And if you want to get better at balancing, like, comment, and subscribe. That's an excellent way to balance your diet of streaming content.
I mean, it does balance the algorithm, so yeah, sure, why not? You can also join our Discord where we talk about balance and how broken or not broken or whatever anyone's games are. And of course, you can also join us on Patreon or become a YouTube member. And Charles, it has happened again. Another $25 patron. Everyone, thank you. Aaron Jackson. We appreciate your donation. No one else gets that because you. Thank you, Aaron. We appreciate your support.
So Frank, today we're going to be talking about how to balance a game and why balance is important.
Yes, so it's not important.
Okay, well, there
controversial take.
And cut the video. Stay witty.
Yeah, so Peter's done the video on this, like in his first year of posting to YouTube, how balance is boring. And I 100% agree. And as a person who's been able to work on various board games, card games, the like, you find out pretty quickly if all you ever care about is balance, your game is gonna kind of be boring.
What do you say balancing? What do you mean by balance?
Yes, that is the great question that we definitely put in the notes, Charles. Good job. I appreciate your transitions. The way most people talk about it is that specifically saying that you don't want things to be over or underpowered. Here's the thing. A lot of the time people are using it in the term of a competitive 1v1 or like everyone going against each other. And that's what they mean when they say balance. They're saying, okay, I don't want to have to come to this battle, this game, and feel like you have the advantage because you paid more money or you have the better cards or whatever it might be.
Gotcha.
Right? That's what most people say. The problem is we are playing an RPG, which is a collaborative game. Not to be confused with collaborative games. That's a different video. You can go watch it. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's probably linked down here somewhere.
Yeah, and also while we're talking about it, Cozy, who inspired that video, Cozy RPG Reviews, is nominated for an Emmy. So go vote for Cozy.
Vote for Cozy. A vote for Cozy is a vote for the right stuff.
Indeed. So the thing is, because it's a cooperative game, right?
Yeah.
We're telling a story, even if you're doing it where it's the GM versus the players, right? Which we've already talked about how we don't like that philosophy because a GM could literally just say rocks fall, everyone dies, and it be within the rules.
GM's there to, again, facilitate the story and tell a good story, basically. Some people think that it's the GM against the players.
Right.
And that kind of ruins the vibe because the GM's really just there to facilitate the gameplay and the narrative.
Right. And so when we are talking about balance, people are still using this idea of balance from like a more competitive standpoint and putting it into this cooperative idea. Now, is balance still important? Yes, just not in the way you think, which is almost probably the title of this video, which is why we're going into it a little bit more of balancing is important, but just do it in a different way. Don't have it be about which ability is the strongest, which ability is broken. Have it be more about options and stuff like that. And that's pretty much the thesis. We'll go into more detail.
So how should a game be balanced? Like what specific criteria should a game be balanced on if you're not balancing the whole experience?
The main thing I like to look at from an RPG perspective is if in playtesting, people are constantly choosing one option over anything else, then that is not balanced. And that is the problem that we get at. It's not the fact that you don't have options, right? You might have option A, B, and C. But if option A is necessary to play the game, then it's not a balanced thing. It's not a balanced game in that regard because everyone feels like they have to pick option A. That's where the issue comes in more so, right? We're not looking at like if Charles chooses A and I choose B for my characters. We're not looking at it from that standpoint because there's a lot of games where some players will make characters that aren't as powerful or as damage dealing or whatever as another one intentionally because you are comboing to do even more damage depending on the game you're playing, obviously.
If that were the case, then every D&D player would start playing Barbarian and things like that. But there are things you can do as a team cooperatively if your characters are balanced differently.
Right.
Again, they should be balanced, but in their own unique way. It's kind of like not doing things equally, but doing things fairly is really what it boils down to.
Yes, that is actually the good point. It shouldn't be that the bard is not as strong as the barbarian in combat, because to almost like that feels correct, right? The guy who inspires people should not be as tough as the barbarian. But the problem comes in where if everyone feels like they have to play a barbarian, or, well, what's the point of playing a bard if I can make a better version of the bard with the barbarian?
Right.
That is where we start to get into the problems. So going into it, what do we look at? We want you to stop thinking about it as what is too powerful, right? Because then you start to get into the minutia of things, right? Like,
Right.
okay, so now we're looking at this plus and this minus. Which is better? How much should I give them? Should it be a +5? Should it be a +6, Charles?
It should be a +17 always.
+17 would be crazy, actually. I don't recommend that in any game system, really.
I'm a game designer.
Yes. Here's the thing. We have talked about it before. You can do the math all you want, but the feel of something is always what's important, right?
Yeah.
In D&D 5th edition, or 5.5, a +1 means nothing. But in like Powered by the Apocalypse games, a +1 can mean the difference between succeeding and failing completely because of the way that the dice and the math works out. Most of the time, those numbers don't matter too often, but knowing your math ahead of time does help with that.
Yeah.
When we start to get into the minutia of like, when does the +1 matter? I think that's when you start to lose the plot a little bit.
Yeah.
I think more people would find benefit looking at not how strong is the barbarian versus the wizard, but more what tools does the barbarian have versus what tools does the wizard have. So
Right.
let's go to an example really quick. A game that I think has really good balance, but not in the way you would think, and that's Daggerheart.
I've played I guess a handful of different characters at this point, but I played multiple characters, multiple classes, and just all of them have their unique flavoring,
Right.
and their unique abilities. And what's really nice about their balance is the cards.
Yeah, and I think with Daggerheart, they have found the groove really well, where each class can get a moment where they really shine. We've had many a times where Zach Dunkerton playing Seraph
Oh gosh,
is like doing some borderline broken things.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't think any of us feel like, oh wow, Zach is the one who's carrying the whole campaign. That's where I think balance becomes an issue. If it was like Zach is the only one who does anything and the rest of us are just here to support that, then we could start to say maybe there's a balancing issue. But it's more that Zach made a build that was around mark and stress so he can reroll so he can guarantee stuff.
Right.
And so when he's in a like clock or a countdown environment, he can make sure that you get those things done. But then outside of that, he's used up all his resources in order to guarantee that success. We released a supplement of 9 new classes for Daggerheart. We took the 9 core domains and rearranged them, creating 9 new classes for you to enjoy. Are you wanting to be a vanguard who magically charges his way into battle? Perhaps a specter that can turn into a ghostly form? Or a corsair, a high flyer who can do some pretty daring feats? All these classes are available in the links down below, or you can become a Patreon and YouTube member at $5 and up and get access to this PDF as well as any other RPG product we make from now until forever. Again, go check out a new cycle, 9 new classes for Daggerheart, available now in the links down below. As always, we thank you guys for your support, and back to the video.
I think the Seraph and other classes have certain things that are useful in certain situations. They're not useful all the time.
Versus a warrior, which is what Jeffrey plays, which is more consistent, which is very similar to how Jeffrey feels. He doesn't want to be like really big out of nowhere. He likes the consistency of like a barbarian or a warrior.
Right.
And it's more consistent in battle, meaning there are some battles where he gets the limelight and some battles where he doesn't. Versus your druid, which again, same thing, where it's like you did that stealth mission where you were like turning into a bird and like investigating the villain's like hideout.
Yeah.
That was really cool and gave you a really cool moment. But we didn't get into the minutia of like, oh man, Charles can turn into a dragon. He's so overpowered and better.
Yeah, which I have turned into a dragon, but there's so many benefits, and that's why I think one of my favorite classes now has become the druid. It feels like I'm part of the team. I'm more collaborative, where as opposed to the D&D druid, where it's like, okay, I'm turning into an animal to basically prevent me from losing my actual hit points and do bigger damage.
but not as good of damage as the barbarian or the, or the fighter or yeah.
But in Daggerheart, when I turn to something, you have all these you have a couple unique abilities. I can, if you're a turn to dragon, you can take up to 3 other people on your back and do things. They put a mechanic behind it. They put a purpose behind it, and that's really nice.
And I think what's really nice again is that they looked at like what is the feel, what do we want the class to do, and didn't really care too much about how broken it might be. The wizard has an ability in Daggerheart where you choose a number at the start of each day, and anytime you roll that number on either of your 2d12s, you gain a hope. That could be considered broken.
Yes.
But it also not necessarily, right? It's a fun ability.
Oh yeah.
I think. And that's to me like, and it also gives the idea of the wizard of like, you're controlling the like chaos of magic, like you think you have the means to be able to do it in the ways that you want. It's really cool from a thematic standpoint versus again, the Seraph with the prayer dice where again, that might seem broken, but you're only getting like a handful of
uses. Yeah.
No matter how much you balance something, and let me be clear on this, no matter how much you balance something, there are people out there who will always find the optimal thing to do.
Yeah, there are players out there, their goal is to break, not the game necessarily, but to basically enhance or optimize their their character so much that they become very versatile in whatever situation they're in.
There are entire channels on YouTube
right.
who's all about like building broken things in D&D.
Right, exactly, exactly. Because, to me, in my mind, it's not difficult to break D&D in that way because they give you so many options in the sense of like with all the different feats and certain abilities, and just you get. That's why basically once you get to like level 12 or something, it becomes pretty much, okay, everything is just easy now.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the funny thing too. We'll talk about it. 5th edition and especially 5.5 try really hard to balance it. They want it to feel like, well, each class could do everything equally.
Right.
And I think they fail for that. There was a mechanic in old school D&D called Cleave.
Yes, I've heard of Cleave.
Well, in 5.5, it's just like, I think you can deal damage even if you miss or something like that.
Something like that.
Which is a fine ability. But originally, you would take a feat in Cleave. And if you slayed a creature, you get to make another attack for free.
Oh, wow.
And here's what's funny about that ability is over time, they tried to make it more balanced, right? So if we hear that ability, right? First of all, we know Jeffrey's going to take that ability in a heartbeat, right? Oh, every time I down an opponent, I'm going to get to attack another opponent for free. Awesome. I'm taking that.
Yeah.
I can see how people think that's broken. Because let's say you're in a fight with 10 minions, skeletons, whatever it might be. Right. You hit one. Cool. Now you get to hit another. Cool. Now you get to hit another, right? There's no limit as long as you keep downing monsters on how often you get to attack.
Right. And that would effectively make the rest of the party kind of useless during that encounter.
It could feel that way.
Yeah.
But let's also think about it. How often do people down enemies?
That's true.
You don't get to have as much of a say in when that happens, right? You might be able to, if you're like keeping notes, be like, I think this guy's at 5 hit points. Don't kill him so I can kill him. But like most of the time people aren't playing D&D that way, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at it, how often are you going to have a situation where you get to cleave and then cleave and then cleave again? But again, the designers were like, oh, this might be too broken. Someone might have one turn every once in a while where they just go ham. And it's like, yeah, that's actually the fun part. I think that's what most people who take cleave are hoping for is that moment. And when that moment happens, you know what's happening? Everyone's not going, oh, shucks. Darn, I really wanted to do all those things. Everyone's freaking out because it happened.
They're cheering on their party member. Like, oh, that's amazing. Keep going. I'm down to my last hit point. Please don't.
And that is what I think people miss when they're looking into balance.
Right.
Is this idea of like you're missing the moments behind it. So again, going back to our example, Dunkerton had to perform like a surgery on this big, basically the king of this land. And it was difficult. He kept failing, but because he has a human, he could basically spend stress to reroll. And then because he's a seraph, he could spend his prayer dice to regain that stress. And he was burning through everything. But all of us were like, this is awesome, right? Yeah. None of us were upset. I think, again, the balancing becomes a problem where if Dunkerton's character is the only one who ever gets to do anything ever.
Yeah.
But I think if you got to that point, it was a problem with the game itself.
Right.
And you should have figured that out beforehand.
Kind of why class systems are kind of like, I think they kind of work sometimes. I know a lot of people like classless systems, but I think classes can work because it informs what a character can do and what they cannot do, especially how Daggerheart does it. So you have these multiple different classes. They all do something unique. And
they all have a cool ability.
Yeah.
Like that's it. That's the cool part.
And they're all like usable. Like they're like all versatile and usable enough where you don't have to feel like, okay, well, I'm not a heavy hitter, so I won't be any good in combat. Like, no, you have combat things for all your characters. You have things that you could use outside of combat for almost all your characters.
Yeah. And obviously we're going to keep singing the praises of Daggerheart. No one should be surprised. Check out the latest video where we got a free box from them. Thank you again.
Thanks.
We're just saying that because we actually do think that despite the fact that people claim Daggerheart isn't made properly, we do think that it's surprisingly well balanced in that regard. Another thing that happens, and again, D&D is very prone to this, power creep. This is where we can start to get into some of the bigger issues. It feels like with 5th edition and 5.5, they've spent so much time making sure that everything was, channeled and like made sure it was balanced equally. And then what happens? They release a new book and those subclasses are always 10 times better than the previous ones.
I have a whole different thing about supplements and whatnot, especially in the D&D world.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the point, is that power creep happens because Magic the Gathering figured this out. If you just keep releasing new cards that are on the same level as the previous ones, no one wants to buy those new cards because it's like, well, I already got what I want here. And instead of taking the route of just making the classes more interesting and unique, which I actually still think they do, but they also feel the need to have to make them more powerful, right? Because once you print a book, you can errata stuff, obviously, but once you print a book, it's that way. So if you print a book and your paladin is the most broken class, there is this need for some designers, for the sake of balance, they've been like, oh, okay, we're going to make this subclass the ranger subclass, so that way it's on the same level as the paladin. Fun fact, 5th edition never made a ranger subclass that was on the same level. I guess maybe Horizon Walker, but that's about it. Which then, what does that problem mean? If I want to play a ranger, I should just play a Horizon Walker ranger. It doesn't matter what other flavor I want, because mechanically the only good one is the Horizon Walker.
Yeah, I can see that becoming a big issue too. Is, again, if you're going to play a subclass, if you're going to play a specific class and you look at the subclasses and only one seems viable, you're going to tend to ignore those other ones because they don't offer as much.
And that gets to the point at the beginning. That's where the problem with balance comes in. Not our characters have to be equal in measure. No, if I want to play a ranger and my only option feels like it's this one, that's when we get to a problem, right? Again, this stuff will naturally happen. Sometimes what happens is you can play test, you can design and figure all these things out, and then one person is like, I actually figured out how to make this entire thing work, and now you've ruined an entire game structure. Again, the hope is you're designing, playtesting with enough people that they will catch that before it gets to print. That's the hope. If you're a PDF only thing, then congratulations, you can keep updating constantly and it's not as big of a deal.
So how do you avoid situations like that?
Yeah, with power creep, I think it's going the same route we talked about. Don't have it be a focus on, we need to get this class to the same level mechanically. We need the ranger to be as strong as the paladin. Have it be more focused on, like we've been saying, what is the flavor that you're going for? Add new things and think about the flavor of it. Add new things and think about the abilities you want to give out. Maybe you came up with a cool new mechanic that you want to show off in this supplement, right? Like we talked about before, for our game, we want to have magic, but that might be its own supplementary thing.
Yeah.
So we could, from a balance perspective, be like, okay, well, casting spells suddenly makes it much more powerful. So we have to make sure that there's a cost to it. And like, that's something we have to think about. But at the same time, we could just be like, hey, functionally speaking, it's the same thing as punching a guy, right? Daggerheart does that really well, shocker, where like the domain cards are basically all spell casting. Even like me as a deceiver, I can try to deceive someone with magic, but really I'm talking to them because it's my presence skill. That's the one I'm rolling. So like you can mechanically have it be like, oh, it doesn't matter that we're casting spells or we're punching people. Right. It's the same thing overall.
Yeah, maybe for something like ours, we could do something like using your resolve. That might be too broken. I don't know.
Oh, we're still in we haven't figured out the base game. Yeah. We can't figure out a supplementary system before we that.
That's crazy. Yeah. Just an idea.
But I would think, again, with power creep, it's almost to some extent inevitably going to happen. And if you get to a point where you're with this same game for 10 years, first of all, congratulations. Power creep's inevitably going to happen to some extent. So again, don't focus on it being a balanced thing. Focus in on being more of like, is this fun for the players? Is this options that are now available that players are going to want to play, but not so much so that they don't play the old ones anymore. Right. That's really what you want to look at. The last thing is playtest. Playtest. Play test.
Yes, please playtest.
I can't speak. I need water. Charles Vamp.
So playtesting is super important because it helps you find all the little things that you might have missed. And the important thing about playtesting is not just playtesting with your friends, but playtesting with people outside of your normal group because they're more likely to be critical of that.
Yeah, we talked about playtesting in the sense of like, it's good to have people who have never heard of your game, who haven't had the rules explained to them, read the rules, because then you can find out if you're explaining it properly. It's also good from a balance perspective of like, if they think a mechanic is leaning one way from like how it's supposed to be used, and you watch and you're like, oh, they're doing it wrong. Okay, I can go back to the drawing board. Or again, if you were like, this is a cool ability. Oh, I didn't realize it could happen that frequently. Maybe we should tone it down.
Again, if you're looking for a place to do that at, if you're not sure about, if you've got something that's not balanced or should be more balanced or should be more unbalanced, however you want to look at it, coming to our Discord would be a great thing for you if you're not already in there.
Yeah. And again, it's entirely possible you come across an option and you're like, wow, that option is too good, and you keep it. Here's the thing. That is perfectly fine. I think it's okay if that is your intent. That is the big thing you want to get into is like, is it your intent to make it that big? So let's talk about Mythic Bastionland really quick.
Okay.
In Mythic Bastionland, you're rolling for your stats. There's no point buy. There's no way of guaranteeing getting specific stats. You always roll, which means there's almost a strong chance that one of your players will have better stats than everybody else. And that feeds into the gameplay of Mythic Bastionland, where like it's about being a myth, right? We talk about like, it's very like, Arthurian legend, right? Like Knights of the Round Table. Who's the main character? King Arthur. Like you have these other knights and they have their own side missions, but like King Arthur's the main character. If that's the point of your game, there's nothing wrong with that. I think you got to be obviously like make sure whatever play group is playing that game is understanding of that, because they can get really frustrated if it's like Frank keeps rolling better than all of us because his stats are better. This sucks.
I've definitely been that player where I'm constantly rolling poorly. And I'm like, why does Jeffrey keep getting away with this? Why am I not doing what he's doing?
Right. And again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that if that's some game design intention.
Right, exactly.
When we played Mythic Bastionland, I remember me having some pretty good stats, and you had an ability where you could swap things with people, and it became a fun game of like, okay, well, Frank has good stats, so how can I utilize that?
Right.
And then I still gave you a good hero moment because, again, as a player, I don't want to... Well, sorry. I do want to hog the limelight, which is why I try not to hog the limelight, but that's its own thing.
Yeah, it's again, it's a balancing thing, I think, even when it comes to actual play. So.
Yeah. But I think that's what Mythic Bastionland does well, is that despite the fact that my stats might be better, you have a cool ability.
Yeah.
Or I might have an okay ability. It was like the Violent Knight where I could like show a special light that only me and like hedgehogs could see for some reason.
Yeah, it was a very interesting thing.
But I think that's fun. And then we got to play into it where it was like I was a like fully upgraded knight that had squires, which were basically the three of you that were recently knighted, who I was like training and being like, this is how you become a knight. You are all being improper on being knights. And that felt good. And that felt like a good story that we were telling.
Well, it also felt fine too, knowing that you were an older knight too.
Yes.
And it was like, okay, we're just starting off. Your knight's been doing this for a minute. So it would make sense that you were kind of mentoring us.
Yes.
And we were just kind of figuring out like, okay, we're finally knights, but we have this mentor knight to kind of help us through this thing. You're kind of like we're like the Robin or the Bat family to your Batman. A little
Pretty
bit,
much.
so,
It felt like that. And again, if that's the intent, there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to know if that's the intent going into it or not. Yeah. So let's talk about a big thing and how to fix it. Because from a balancing perspective, and we talked about this before too, because Charles has talked about how he thinks barbarians are broken, right? Because you've seen people do insane stuff with them.
Right.
And I say you're wrong. And we'll get into that. So let's talk about it. We're going to talk about how can you balance the martial caster divide. So if you're not familiar with this, especially in D&D, but in a lot of other games too, the problem with martial characters, aka people who fight up close, or even ranged characters, but basically ones who don't use magic, at later levels don't become as good as the spellcasters, because the spellcasters are able to warp reality. And you're over here being like, but I can hit a guy real hard with my axe.
It's from super far away.
Now, Charles has argued that barbarians are broken. Why do you think that is, Charles?
They get advantages on attacks when they're raging, right? So they're twice as likely to hit.
They don't go down as easily. They deal damage.
Exactly. They're good sponges for like. I mean, which again, I appreciate having a barbarian in the group. Don't get me wrong, because having a barbarian in the group means we have a damage sponge.
Yeah, and again, that is the intent behind the barbarian class, and I don't think that's a bad thing, right? Versus wizards, right? are much more squishy, but they can do reality warping stuff. You could argue that's a balancing mechanism, and it's a good one. I would also say, though, the reason spellcasters are better is because of versatility. And that's, again, where we get into the thing with balance. It's not that barbarians are doing better numbers than wizards.
Right.
It's the fact that the wizard can fly up into the air, bring a meteor down, and do as much damage as a barbarian hitting someone with their axe.
Yeah.
Right. That's the issue that we talk into.
I think one of the other issues you come across too is that the barbarian, again, I don't know the specifics. I don't play barbarian a whole lot. They are like more consistent because there's spell slots that limit you.
Correct.
So
right. And that's another way of balancing spellcasters. But as we all have talked about, spell slots suck.
They do suck.
And ultimately, it doesn't matter too much. Now, there's a few different ways you can go about fixing this problem. Number one, you can go the draw steel route. You just eventually have the marshals become spellcasters to some extent. In draw steel, you have the fury, which is the barbarian.
Right.
And at first they're just doing barbarian stuff, but then as they grow more and more, these elemental forces infuse into their body, and now they're doing crazy things. Like maybe they're flying in the air now. Think about a flying barbarian. That's scary.
It's like a flying spider.
That means you get the versatility of being a spellcaster despite still being a martial class. That's one way to go it. You can go the other route of Daggerheart, where they blur the line between casting a spell and being a martial class so much that it doesn't feel like there's any difference.
Even if it's not a magical type thing, it feels magical, or it feels powerful at least.
Or again, because of the way the mechanics work, I might not be a I might be a fighter or warrior that can't cast a spell, but I can use my words in a similar way because, again, from a mechanic standpoint, I'm doing the same thing as a spellcaster. But because we can flavor it, because it's more loose with definitions and with flavor about that stuff, it can still have the same impact as it would against another class. So those are the two different routes you can go. Because here's the thing. Every time they try to make it more balanced, right, with 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, it just means that they give the barbarian more damage to do. But that doesn't fix the problem of the wide abilities that a wizard has versus a barbarian. So it's either give wider abilities to the martial, or it's make them have the same amount of abilities, but then have it be more about flavor rather than it being about what you can or can't do.
Which I feel like that's kind of what Daggerheart does.
Yes.
Regardless of what class you are, if you have access to this ability, here's what you can do. How does that look to you? How does that look to your character? Now,
for our game, when it comes to balancing, that's the thing we have to think about, right? We're obviously not doing a class-based game. We did talk about it a little bit, but with more feat-focused games, where you're doing combinations, you will sometimes get weird, wacky combinations you didn't think about. Peter talked about this with Tales from Elsewhere, where someone was able to basically make a fling build, where I think like they can throw other people or even themselves somehow. I forget the exact specifics, but like you can ask Peter, and he was like, you know what? That wasn't what I intended for, and it might be a little broken, but that's fun.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's going to be our route kind of going forward. We're obviously going to be focusing on making sure there's no one ability or feat or whatever that's so good everyone feels like they have to take it. But outside of that, if it's like, I'm going to make a more werewolf-focused character, and then Charles is like, cool, but I took tinkering. We want them to feel like that. We want them to feel like Charles feels like a tinkerer, and I feel more like going down this more like brawler werewolf route.
That's kind of what this entire video's purpose is to kind of look at the different angles of balancing and not whether or not you're doing it right or wrong,
right?
But more or less, how does it make you feel? How does it feel during play testing? And I think it's really what it boils down to is, do other people enjoy it? Do you enjoy it? And even if you don't enjoy it or they don't enjoy it, how would you fix it? So just kind of keeping your eye on like how to make things balanced, in your own special way, not focusing on like everyone has to have the same abilities or everyone's going to want to play this one class and not.
Yeah. Don't look at damage output as a big thing. Don't look at like, oh, this class gets to do X, Y, or Z more often. Look at how many abilities does each class get? Are you okay with that? Are you okay with the options that the players have? Are the players choosing one option over every other option?
Right.
These are the things you want to look at. And again, you could be okay with that. You could be like, well, I want the players to learn the lesson of you have to go down a specific skill tree system. And so I'm going to make this one so obviously good as a like design feature of like to get them enticed into it. I don't think that's a good route to go, but maybe that is what you want to do. And again, we talked about Myth of Bastionland isn't balanced.
No.
But it's so fun.
It is a lot of fun.
So ultimately, just make sure you're intentional about what you want to do when it comes to balance, and then you go forward with that.
Yeah, I think as long as you're being upfront in what you want and what you expect of people playing your game, I think this is the only thing you can do, really.
So thank you guys for watching. Again, go vote in the Annie Awards for Cozy, and stay witty.
Stay witty.
Stay witty. We didn't harmonize. No balance
Witty.
here. By the way, did you ever think about that Thanos cared about balance, and he's a villain? So